On Friday, we talked about, Cliff and I talked about this judicial nominee, Michael Boggs, who is part of a deal that had to take place because Patrick Leahy is still honoring the Senate tradition of blue slips, wherein senators from any given state can refuse to return their blue slip, which would allow a vote to proceed on federal judicial nominees coming from that state. It's basically like a hidden filibuster that can be performed by one or two senators. In that deal that was struck with the Republican lawmakers, senators from Georgia, the Republicans, I think, got 3 picks. The Democrats got 2. One of those picks is a man named Michael Boggs, who, while he was a state judge in Georgia, never ruled on such things like choice or marriage equality or prayer. So we don't know necessarily how he would address those as a judge. So we need to go back to his legislative record when he was in the Georgia State House. There, he not only opposed marriage equality, not only championed the idea of waving the Confederate flag over the Georgia State House, not only attacked a woman's right to choose, among other things, but he didn't just oppose marriage equality. There was a law already on the books in Georgia which outlawed or discriminated against, I should say, gay people and their right to get married. But he wanted a constitutional amendment in Georgia's constitution that would maintain this outlawing because he was afraid of activist judges. And not just that he was afraid of activist judges. He was afraid that activist judges would go against the legislature and rule against good Christian values. Listen carefully to this portion of his speech given in 2004 on the floor of the Georgia State House.
Opportunity to stand up in support of this resolution. I think it's important to recognize the dangers that we face with respect to activist judges, with respect to mayors who are operating in derogation of current state law. Many folks have asked, well, why do we need this particular proposed constitutional amendment in light of the Defense of Marriage Act, which is codified in 19.3.1. Many of you know that in 1998, the Georgia Supreme Court struck down Georgia's sodomy laws, and I found it interesting that the lone dissent in that case by Justice Carley, speaking with respect to the state regulating the private sexual conduct of consenting adults, that Justice Carley indicated, quote, that because this right is not in the context or in the text of the Constitution, its boundaries are necessarily unclear. Other states have similar prohibitions against same-sex marriages. In Hawaii, for example, the state Supreme Court has struck down a statute similar to that is codified in Georgia law. Same has been done in Alaska. I submit to you that proposing a constitutional amendment that in fact mirrors the language, for the most part, that is codified in Georgia's Defense of Marriage Act will give us an additional safeguard. It will in fact prohibit state constitutional challenges to the proposition that is outlined in Georgia law already. That's important. It will not affect federal challenges, but it will affect state challenges. I tell you that, and I submit to you that whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're rural, from a rural area or like myself, or whether you represent an urban area, we have.
What he's about to say here is, we have opportunities seldom in my short tenure in the legislature to stand up for certain things. In other words, this is a big opportunity for us. And here is why. Because he is talking about, this is where he is wading deep, deep, deep into the culture war. And he wants to make sure that these activist judges who are saying that it should be against the law to be gay don't get their hands on our declining to give rights to gay people to get married. Listen to this. This is very important because I think this speaks about a whole host of other issues.
I have opportunities seldom in my short tenure in the legislature to stand up for things that are commonsensical, things that are premised on good conservative Christian values, and in this instance in particular, to support the sanctity of marriage. I'm going to ask all of you, like me.
All right. So, and then he goes on just to ask for some more support. But I'm curious, what's on that list? He says in this instance, it's just particularly defense of marriage. I'm curious, what other things that are premised on good conservative Christian values would this guy want to fight against activist judges about? I mean, I wonder what those things are. This is the nominee by the Democratic president. This isn't the one that's the gimme to the Republican senators. This is the one that's supposed to be what we get. This guy's going up for a vote tomorrow in the Senate Judiciary Committee. This guy held back on outlining to the committee what he did as a Georgia state lawmaker, and this is why he held back on it. Because he knew that, or at least he assumed, that if a Democratic senator heard that I have a problem with activist judges who are doing things like providing marriage equality, or God knows what else, and I mean God knows what else, that are contra to commonsensical conservative Christian values, they may not vote for me. Well, now they know. Now they know. And the question is, are these Democratic senators going to vote to confirm this guy in this committee? If they do, it's outrageous.
I mean, this sounds a little flippant, but I literally am wondering, like, is his distinguishing Democratic position from the Republican picks that he supports the MLK holiday? Like, I mean, like, literally, what the hell is his Democratic position at all?
He just doesn't have a record, I guess, on the judiciary. I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. I get it. It's Georgia. But I imagine there's one other person qualified for the federal bench.
Well, and not only that, there's actually some trends in which, because the white voters in places like Georgia are becoming so overwhelmingly Republican, that some of those southern parties are actually there's more African Americans in leadership. There's a little bit more progressive energy in Democratic parties in the South because, those right-wing Democrats have mainly abandoned them.
It's crazy.
It's unbelievable.